Well, folks, welcome to another episode of the Noble Man Podcast, and I am delighted to have as my guests today Jill Marquis and Jarid Mayo. Both of them are with CareNet, and the function of CareNet is to work with a whole network of pregnancy resource centers, pregnancy support centers. I know sometimes I may use the wrong terminology here, so I am completely opening myself up for correction. But what we're talking about here is pro-abundant life, not just pro-life, but pro-abundant life. And the director of CareNet, the president of CareNet, has written a book by that title. So let's get started. Jill, tell us what your role is at CareNet, and maybe even a little bit about how we met at the Southern Baptist Convention.
Mike, thank you so much for having us on. We really appreciate this. I am CareNet's Director of Abortion Recovery and Care. I've been in this position for 5 years. I was brought in to build out this part of CareNet's ministry, and it has just been a joy to come alongside our pregnancy centers and to come alongside the church to help them do abortion recovery better or start abortion recovery. And it's been a wild ride. How we met, you and I met at the Southern Baptist Convention. CareNet knew that we wanted to really engage the church in the work that we're doing. When I first met Roland Warren, our president, Roland said to me, he said, the post-abortive in our churches, this is an unreached people group. And I love that he used that missionary language because it was so true. Right. Abortion's part of my story. And so that just really resonated with me. I really thought about how those of us with an abortion in our past sit in our churches sidelined and silent until we're set free from the guilt and the shame. So when we started talking, when CareNet started talking about having a presence at the SBC, I'm like, yes and amen. Our whole church engagement team was like, yes and amen. So the point of us being at the SBC was to start having conversations with pastors and ministry leaders to say, hey, if this is not part of what you offer, if this is not a discipleship pathway within your church, you need to be thinking about it, because we're not just pro-life. Like you said, we're pro-abundant life. And that means we want to be able to serve someone who is in a crisis pregnancy, making a pregnancy decision. And we do that with our pregnancy centers, but the church also needs to be equipped to do that, because when we find out we're pregnant and we're like, oh my gosh, this is not a good thing, we're not running to the church for help. We're running to Planned Parenthood because they've been marketing it to us for a really long time, and the church has been largely silent on it. So we had a nice group of people out at the SBC, and our job was to just be talking with pastors and ministry leaders about what could this look like in your church.
I love it, man. There's so many questions I want to ask there, and we'll come back to that. But Jarid, tell us about your role at CareNet, how long you've been there, and what the Lord has you doing through CareNet, because it's a little unusual to see guys involved in this ministry realm.
It is. It totally is. Well, I'll say it used to be. How about that?
Okay.
But
good.
I'm the senior manager of Fatherhood and Family Ministry here at CareNet. I've been here for about 2.5 years, and I was in a pregnancy resource center, whatever you want to call it, Mike. We know what you're talking about. I was in one of those places for 3.5 years. So I've been in the ministry for about 6. And Jill actually interviewed me for this position here at CareNet. So she must have liked me. So that worked out well. But we realized that it takes 2 to make a baby. Right?
Yes.
It takes 2 to make a baby. And for the first 50 years of this ministry that we've been trying to do to women, we've realized, there's another one, isn't there? There's another one that needs to be connected. And those first 50 years, we kind of missed that. And so for the past 5 to 10, we've really said, when we include him in this, let's see what kind of results we get. And we find that the more that men are involved, the more lives we see saved. Like Jill said, we are a pro-abundant life ministry. So we're not just about great, we saved the baby, good luck, God bless. We
Right.
want mom and dad to hear about Jesus as well. And so when dad is involved, there are more choices for life. And so we got to reach him at the pregnancy center.
I love it. So let me segue from that into something that Jill said. She said this should be a discipleship pathway. And boy, that could be new thinking for a lot of folks, because they're thinking that, pregnancy center ministry, we're just kind of serving women and trying to help them care for a baby and carry a child to term, because that child carries the Imago Dei. And it's valuable. It's created in the image of God. And so how do you explain that working in this field of ministry is part of a discipleship pathway? Unpack that for someone for whom that may be a new thought, that this is truly discipleship.
Well, I'll start, and then Jarid, can you jump in? Because Jarid and I get the opportunity to work together on a lot of this. Sure. So when you think about the issue of an unplanned pregnancy, we want to reach that client, ahead of an abortion decision. So getting her in a pregnancy center is getting her ahead of that decision. Once she has walked through the decision process in one of the pregnancy centers, the pregnancy center needs to have the confidence in their partner churches to hand her and him off for discipleship, because the job of the pregnancy center is to serve the next abortion determined woman or man walking through their door. The job of the church is to make fully devoted followers of Christ. So we've got to have that relationship with the church. So that's the upstream of it. We want to be upstream of the problem.
Sure.
And we want the church also to be able to wade into that hard conversation with a young person who may be facing that crisis pregnancy. So the pregnancy center is equipped. We want to equip the church to have the hard conversation. And then, if somebody in the church has a conversation with a young person who's like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, we want them to be able to connect that young person to a pregnancy center for some immediate care and some, let's get them past the immediate crisis. So that's the upstream. The downstream of the problem is, once people have chosen abortion, what about them? There is tremendous fallout from an abortion decision, and it impacts every facet of our life. This is the thing that they don't tell you when you go into Planned Parenthood. They just tell you that this is going to solve the problem. Well, it solves what you think is your immediate problem, and then it brings a whole host of new ones along with it. And so we want to be able to care well for the women and men sitting in the church and in our communities who have an abortion in their past, who are really navigating life through a broken windshield. We will often describe, when you choose abortion, it's like being in a car accident. You hit the windshield and it shatters, but it's safety glass, so it doesn't fall. So you're driving this car, but you are navigating life through this broken perspective.
Right.
And
wow.
I know, my sister gave me that visual, and I'm like, I'm using that forever. But that's so true. And until, we're not going to see clearly until we stand face to face with the Lord.
Right.
But let's have a much clearer perspective. And so let's get healed from that. And, that's that wraparound care is what CareNet does. I mean, the fatherhood and family team, help provide that as well. Jarid and his folks are really, I'm still Jared's thunder. Jarid, you talk about what you guys do, because it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, my goodness, how do I follow Jill? Like, everything she said, it's like, I wanted to say that. I wanted to say, all right. Jill's got it, but absolutely. What we realize is that our buildings basically are full of people that need to be discipled. And the church's job is to go out and make disciples. So we really work here at CareNet to try and make that connection of the pregnancy center can't do it all. Like, right. we do a lot, and we do a lot of resourcing and things, but after we tell these folks about Christ, we can't also be their disciplers. So we really do try and partner with churches and pastors to help them catch that pro-abundant life vision for coming down and now taking these guys and ladies and discipling them post or pre-abortive or never abortive too.
Yeah, I feel that. I also sense that in many cases the churches have thought that's an area that we don't want our people thinking about necessarily. We don't want our students thinking about premarital sex and an unwanted pregnancy, and so this is an area that we've kind of avoided engaging, when I believe that we're at a point now where it makes all the sense in the world to fully engage it. And I'm just going to throw out a couple of ideas to get you guys to react to them. I have tried to convince some men's ministry groups at various churches that I work with to plan for a men's breakfast or some event at a local pregnancy center so that the guys get to go there and see the facility, see what goes on, and be exposed to that. I would love to see it be part of every student ministry strategy that a student minister would take students. Maybe it's a junior and high school trip or something like that, because I sense that parents would rather their children not think about those things. But I know from my own experience as a parent, my kids were already thinking about sex and girls and guys and all kinds of stuff. And so the work that we can do to give them some tools, some things to think about for themselves personally, but also they may have friends that come into a crisis scenario. And if they have relationships or they have familiarity, man, I would love to hear the story of a senior or a junior in high school whose friend confided in them that they had a pregnancy, they were unexpected, and that other student helped get them to a pregnancy resource center and find that resource. So before you lean into that, maybe Jarid, you start with this one. I also appreciate it. It sounds like what you guys do, the way you see this, is we are first line. So we kind of triage. We help get through the crisis part, but there's a lot more to this, especially if someone once a decision is made one way or the other, there's much care that needs to take place. And you guys aren't really equipped for that long-term engagement. So it's the church walking with you through the longer term that is the big win in all of this. So, man, we've got to start thinking about the longer term. So good stuff. Jarid, you wanted to jump in and talk about trying to get churches to bring groups to see a pregnancy center?
Yeah, and Roland makes a really good analogy. He talks about two different silos in how pastors see ministry. And we've got our soup kitchen, our clothing drive, all that kind of stuff. We've got that ministry. And then we have that whole discipleship ministry, which is what the church is called to go and do. Right. And so when approaching a pastor, we try and say, help your pastor understand that there are two different silos. Because what he's hearing is another thing I have to do, another ministry I have to lead, that I have to run, and all this extra stuff on top of what the church should be doing. So you sit with him and you explain to him, this is not a this silo ministry, we're over here. Jill and Jarid have a pregnancy center down the road, and it's full of people that need to be discipled. We're not getting them soup and clothes and all that kind of stuff. They've been told about Jesus, and now they need some discipleship. And helping your pastor reframe his thought process to realize this isn't another thing I have to do. This is what we are supposed to be doing in the first place. The soup kitchen is wonderful, but it really should take second place to the discipleship aspect. We're telling people about Jesus, they're getting saved, and now we got to run them through the Bible and help them be wonderful believers. That's what we're supposed to do. And that really should be a male-led thing. Like, we're the leaders, right? We're supposed to be doing this. And unfortunately, we're not. You know, we get most pregnancy centers have the baby bottle ministry at your church. You know, on Father's Day, on Mother's Day, you announce the baby bottles and you take them to work and you fill it with your change. And then on Father's Day, we collect them. Thanks. We support the pregnancy ministry, and that's wonderful. The church, the pregnancy center needs that, and they need the youth group to come out and cut their grass and that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, what the pregnancy center wants more than anything is for the church to partner with them and do that men's breakfast and help them catch the vision. Because sadly, there's a lot of death happening in our cities. So we have a building that's full of life, and people are choosing life, and we're seeing babies, being brought into life every day because of the decisions that their parents are making. And we need these guys to be able to go to the center, have some bacon and eggs on a Sunday morning, meet with the executive director, meet with the fatherhood champion. That's what we call when there's a guy that works at the center, a fatherhood champion. Take a tour of the building and see what is really happening, because you don't know what you don't know. Right. And 9 out of 10 churches are not preaching about the abortion issue. So our guys don't know. And they think it's a woman's issue anyways, right? It's her body, her choice. The church believes that, for goodness sakes. So I would encourage you, just do the breakfast. Start the breakfast yourself. Call the local pregnancy center. Say, this is what we'd like to do. I'm pretty sure they're not going to say no. They'll probably even pay for your bacon and eggs to come in there. And just tell them, like, this is what we're doing. Absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. Jill, you want to add anything to that?
Oh, I've always got something to add. Always. I'm actually sitting here with some analysis. We collect a lot of data from our pregnancy centers each year. And we just got all the data, and I have been combing through it, looking for what are the opportunities, where are wins, where are the opportunities, and that kind of thing. And, we have seen a really nice uptick in the number of people that women and men that are coming to parenting classes at pregnancy centers. We've seen a huge uptick in the number of men who are taking advantages of the services at the pregnancy center when they come with their partner. So we see the guys are there, and but there are not men from the church who are stepping in to walk alongside those guys. And so while Jarid and the Fatherhood and the Family team are helping to equip the folks that are in the pregnancy center to minister to those men, they do a fabulous job. Part of what they need are the guys that are already walking with the Lord to come in and say, yes, I will help teach a class on, how to change a baby, because guys change babies. And so there's that side of it where the church is really missing. And, we have a fatherlessness epidemic in this country.
Absolutely.
And so, if the gentlemen that are listening to this, if you will really think about the men that poured into your life or didn't pour into your life, how might you be that mentor for someone else?
I'll just jump into this because I am constantly pressing for us to do a better job of Titus 2 ministry for both men and women. And what I talk about there is intergenerational engagement. And most of the drum beating that I do is on the side of engaging, getting seasoned men, I call them. I don't call them old men, but seasoned men to invest in younger men. And what I'll often say is that the older man needs the younger man's strength, and the younger man needs the older man's wisdom. So there's a symbiotic relationship there of strength and wisdom. And sometimes we just have to keep pressing, honestly, the seasoned men into the idea that there is nothing more rewarding that you can do than to invest in someone else. And so, especially a younger man who's trying to figure life out, because the truth is that every one of us as men made some mistakes along the way somewhere. We learned something from those mistakes, and we can redeem some of those mistakes, some of those difficult seasons, by investing in others. And so part of what I want to jump into next, Jill, I know that a good part of your responsibility, your position is for abortion care ministry, but you talk a lot about post-abortive ministry. And I think I told you at the convention that I had a lady that came and set up a table at one of our conferences to talk to post-abortive men. And I was like, well, I don't know if that's going to be useful or not, but she was busy all day long. And I believe, guys, if you're listening to this and somewhere in your story, you might be a dad who, because of the shame that you felt over your daughter's pregnancy, you took her to the pregnancy center. You're a post-abortive guy. You may have been a boyfriend, you may have been whatever. Jill, talk about investing in post-abortive men and what you see there, and how this could be a way to see God redeem some difficult decisions, some tough times, some mistakes that we made in our lives, and use that for His glory, because they have unique perspective, especially.
Absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. Revelation 12:11 says, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, evil is overcome. And, for the guys, it's never talked about. We're starting the conversation, but we have, like Jarid said, we've spent 50 years telling you to sit down and shut up. It's my body, my choice. And that's not true. The more men that I have encountered who have an abortion in their past, what I recognize right off the bat is that we have a shared experience. How we experienced it was very different, but we have this shared experience. And when I talked about that broken perspective, men have that broken perspective too. It influences every aspect of their life. It influences their decision making. It changes the way that they operate in the world. And when we were putting together our men's study, which is called Reclaiming Fatherhood, I had the opportunity to work with 5 post-abortive men. And what I learned from these guys and from conversations with other ministries that work with men is that for guys who are involved in an abortion decision on whatever level, maybe they just said, I'll support you, whatever you decide. Maybe they pushed for it. Maybe they didn't know. Whatever their level of involvement is, they come away from this, like I said, with that fractured perspective. And their default position becomes one of anger. One of the guys that helped write the book, Jim, he said, Jill, we just walk around low level pissed off all the time. Yep. And I thought that was really interesting. So as we go through the men's abortion recovery study, we talk about, who was involved in the abortion decision? Who did you talk to? Who did you not talk to? We're not looking to shift any blame, but we are looking to see who influenced the decision, because those are people that a lot of us will harbor anger for that sometimes we don't even recognize. And again, for the men, it's that same experience where, like I said, like Jim said, they walk around low level pissed off. And so how do we get to that? Because anger often masks an underlying emotion. I did a bunch of research and found out that there is something called norepinephrine that is released from your brain when you're angry, and it acts as an analgesic. So it's a painkiller. It's easier for us to be mad than to deal with this. So what we want for the guys is to, first of all, we want them to know Jesus and to get them to that place where they can talk about the abortion experience and how it affected them. We're really walking them to the foot of the cross, and we do that. That's right. Just helping them to understand how the decision came about, how it affected them, what kind of habit loops were formed in their brains as a result of this decision, and then how to rewire your brain. The Bible is very clear that you take captive every thought and bring it under the control of the Lord. Well, when you can create new neural pathways in your brain. There's truly nothing new under the sun. Because the Bible tells us you take captive every thought. So with the guys, as they're walking through this, we help them to recognize these patterns in their lives and to start replacing those thoughts. And a big piece of reclaiming fatherhood is for men to develop good, healthy relationships with other guys, with other men who will walk alongside them. Because when you're healed and whole, you're going to be able to walk alongside another man who has gone through this. And when I think about what Jarid and the Fatherhood team are doing, they are building up these young men so that they can step into that role of father as protector and provider. But if he has an abortion in his past, until he's healed, he can't fully walk in that. So, I love working with our fatherhood guys because like I said, we get to do this hand in glove, so that these young men can really be who God calls them to be.
Absolutely. You've quoted a number of scripture there that the verse that I think about so frequently in a scenario like this is Romans 8:1. And you started off talking about the guilt and shame associated with being connected to an abortion. And Romans 8:1 said, there's therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And my goodness, I work with a lot of guys who have various challenges from their past. And that is a hook that frequently a guy needs to go and just hang whatever Satan is using to beat him with today, to just go hang that on that hook and say, no, there's no condemnation because I'm in Christ Jesus. And so that is a valuable part of what it looks like, I think, to move beyond this. And you've got to have help because Satan will just keep your head down and keep you focused on your mistakes rather than lifting your head up. The Lord wants us to lift our head up and see where our help comes from. So some good stuff there for us to just press in with. Jarid, give me an example. You work with churches. Give me a story of a church that has really done a great job of coming alongside a pregnancy center. What does a model look like for that, for a church that's engaged and supportive and helping get the work done?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a million of those, but one that I think of, it's actually in Florida, is what I think of first. There's a gentleman down there named Mark Eiginger, and he has 53 volunteers that are male at his pregnancy center from the church. And so, and he's a volunteer at the center, and so they're able to. This is how it looks for a guy. Okay, we want him first to be invited to come to the pregnancy center when she or he is making the appointment. So he's invited to come into this. When they both come in, they both get an intake. They're treated exactly the same. So they both become clients. She goes and talks to her consultant. He goes and talks to his consultant. They're both getting the same thing. They both go to the ultrasound. Again, they're both getting. Now he's not getting an ultrasound. That would be kind of weird. But he gets to watch it. As long as with her permission, he gets to be there. Then we offer them education classes. We have courses here at CareNet that we recommend, like Dr. Dad and Dr. Dad Healthy Training, and then that's where those volunteers come in. Is they are those guys that are in all of those different spots. If he needs help, they can work. There can be a man at a pregnancy center working the window and taking the intake. There can be a man at the pregnancy center answering the phone and saying, "How can I help you today? I'm making an appointment for you." It might be a bit of a surprise, but we're trying to normalize that. Yeah. And that's what those are all church positions. Somebody has to talk him through what's going on in his life. Tell me what brings you here today. What are you thinking? What's she thinking? Someone to debrief with him after the ultrasound. Someone to run him through Dr. Dad. And then someone who, through all that, he's learning about Jesus because we're asking him questions about your support system. And one of those support systems is your church. What are your thoughts about life? That's where God and Jesus get to enter the conversation. When they see their baby on that video game screen, that's their point of reference. That's their mindset. They're like, oh, now I get the whole God Jesus thing. Holy cow! There's a baby in there, and that's where our volunteers come in. And now they start. All right, we've gone through Dr. Dad. I've helped you learn how to, like Jill said, change a diaper, and you know how to take care of mom. Now we're going through Healthy Dad, and you're learning how to be a great man, spiritual, emotional, financial health. Now, I would like to invite you to church with me. Can you come with me on Sunday? Or we're having a church baseball game. Maybe church isn't for you, but we're playing baseball on Wednesday. Right. Come do baseball with me. And so Mark has 53. He might have 54 by now, but he has 53 guys that are they cover every single hour that the pregnancy center is open. There's always a man there, and there's never a time where a man might show up and there's no one there to speak life and to speak value into him. Yeah. Wow. So many things that we could talk about. One thing that comes to mind, Jill, you mentioned this earlier, and I think about it with your comments there as well, Jarid.
the church. We want them to get to the church. But the truth is, many of these folks have not had great experiences with the church. And so it just makes me think, I think it's Philip Yancey's book, What's So Amazing About Grace. He talks about being in a restaurant late at night, and this group of ladies come in who are clearly ladies of the evening. And he finds out that this one girl, it's her birthday. And so he makes this big deal of her birthday or something. And he says to her, have you ever gone to church? And her response, I've never forgotten this. Her response was, why would I go to church? I already feel badly enough about myself. And so when we are the church, when the church is the people, then we need to work a little bit more diligently to receive people in tough circumstances the way Jesus received people in tough circumstances. And so there is an ultimate judge, but it ain't us. And so we have the privilege of being able to love people where they are. And sometimes that means getting over our own judgmental posture and just learning to love people. So any advice on that from either of you about how do we receive people where they are, recognize that there but for the grace of God go I, or goes my daughter, or goes my girlfriend, and how do we help the church lead with love instead of judgment? Is that a fair question, and one that causes us to stumble?
It is. And, we have an entire church engagement team. Actually, abortion recovery and care is housed under church engagement because we believe so strongly that abortion recovery should be in the church. If a church has divorce care, grief share, celebrate recovery, abortion recovery goes right with that. And one of the things that CareNet offers is we have this really great curriculum called Making Life Disciples. It's for the church. It is, what does it look like to be pro-abundant life on the ground? What does it look like to have a conversation with a young woman, young man who are facing the pregnancy decision? How do we walk into that with them so that the church becomes the place they'll run to, not the place they'll run from? And whenever I get the opportunity, to walk people through Making Life Disciples, I head a life team at my home church here. I tell people, listen, we don't have to have all the answers, but we do need to know where to help them get connected. We need people. We need the leadership in our church to know there's a team of people here who are equipped to handle that conversation. And all you have to do is call us, text us. We'll drop what we're doing. I'll drop what I'm doing and come and meet with those young people. Or if somebody shares with you, what, Pastor, or, somebody made a comment about abortion on TV and it just really, whatever feelings it brought up. Again, we need to be attuned to that and have some knowledge of how to step into that. And we teach that. We want the church to know. So when you talk about, we don't want the pastor to think about, oh my gosh, here's another program, whatever that I have to handle. No, sir, we have it. We've got it for you. We've got a new platform that we're going to put it on that's going to make it so much easier for the church to engage in and learn the material and walk through it so that then they can engage with and walk through it with some young people. But let me say this, Mike, this work is messy. People are messy, and Jesus washed feet. And when you think about the feet that he washed, they were walking on streets through camel dung and people excrement and all the things. Okay, listen, we're messy, and it's going to take you being inconvenienced for the kingdom. So please raise your hand and say, yes, I'll be inconvenienced for the kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know what? I work with men all over the place all the time, been doing this for 20 years, and my sense over and over again is men need to be called to something that is a challenge. Quite honestly, engaging life in the local church is often so easy that a lot of guys just say, well, there are other things that I'm going to do that are going to give me a sense of risk and exhilaration. But there's a lot here that is hard if you're willing to step into it. Mm-hmm. And so it's a great place to go and be challenged. So one final thing here, and I'm watching our time. Level of disclosure, so I've got a guy that's on our staff, and he works part-time with Noble Warriors in the western part of the state of Virginia and part-time at a pregnancy resource center there. So I have lots of connections with him. It's not a CareNet center, and we could unpack how some centers are connected with CareNet, some centers aren't, but that's beside the point. I've also got my daughter-in-law works at a pregnancy center outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. And she is pregnant. And so, man, the tension and the angst that she felt as a counselor at a pregnancy center, knowing that there was a baby in her womb, and she's sitting across from an abortion-minded person who also has a baby in her womb. And the difference is, I want this baby, and the other lady did not want that baby. And so what a crazy tension that was for her. And so part of what I just kind of throw it out as a question, can we do a better job of helping people welcome the innocence of human life and working toward helping them see that this child is wanted? How do you coach toward, if people maybe get beyond the abortion thing, but they're not able to care for a child, how are you coaching people to consider adoption and other means to bring this child to term? What are your thoughts about that and how we work through that whole scenario so that we can communicate that children are wanted and they're blessings from the Lord? Is that a fair question?
I feel like that's a whole podcast in of itself.
Probably.
What do you say in the options room? Well, we have like an 8-hour training on what we say in the options room. But we encourage our centers to share that their job is not to judge the client. I am here to present you with education. I want to make sure that you understand abortion, parenting, and adoption. My job is not to judge you, but I would feel terrible if you didn't know everything that you needed to know about those three things. So then we tell our clients exactly what those three things are. We talk about adoption. A lot of our clients think adoption is foster care, and their kid is going to be abused in the system. And it's like, well, let's talk about what our choices are. So first, they're different, but abused in the system or not having life in the first place. And you'll see like this aha moment, like, oh, I guess I didn't even think of that. That one is very, very much worse. In the case of your daughter, rubbing her belly and making that, our ministry is a relational ministry, okay? It's all about relationship. It goes back to how you get them to come to church when they say, why would I want to go be judged? But Mike, if I've been meeting you for 5 or 6 weeks, going through Dr. Dad and learning about you and getting to know you and investing in you and having coffee with you at Panera Bread, you're going to trust me because we built a relationship. So we're gonna head off to church. But just kind of asking your client sitting across from you, tell me what you think is happening in her belly. Tell me what's going on. Tell me, what do you know about the abortion? What does an abortion procedure look like? And explaining to them, because 100 out of 100 times they don't know either of those things. And just explaining to them, you don't know what you don't know. And even the latest statistics have shown that the pro-life gender gap has flipped. 60% of men now are pro-life, and 40% of women are now pro-life. And what happened was when the whole Roe v. Wade thing came out, well, now there's all these commercials telling men the truth, and they didn't know the truth. So they saw that. Even though all these referendums passed and everything, as soon as that changed, the guys that were sitting in on my couch across from me they knew what an abortion was, and they knew how it happened, and they were like, I told her we're not doing this. It was an overnight thing. I know that I kind of went on a couple different rabbit trails with the answer to your question, but man, we could talk about, there's so many different ways that we could go.
Well, and I'm grateful for that. I got to tell you, this is, for whatever reason, God has drawn my heart to this, to see more men engage this ministry from the local church. And so if Noble Warriors can partner with organizations like CareNet to at least make noise about this and give visibility to it. And there's some research, I think, that came out a few years ago that said one of the most compelling reasons for a woman to not choose abortion is the question of whether or not there is a supportive man in the picture. And it could be dad, it could be boyfriend, it could be father, husband, uncle. It could be a mentor who says, we're going to stand with you. And it's just different if there's a guy who's willing to stand with someone in a crisis. And so, I want Noble Warriors to be about the business of trumpeting this and helping us disciple men through the local church, that this is ministry worth doing, and we've given it over to women for far too long. Not that they're incapable, but we've sat on the sidelines for a game that we should have been playing in. So is there any final thing you guys would like to say as we get to time here? I've dropped a nickel in the jukebox again, I know.
You did. I have a couple of things. I very much believe that the tide is turning with the abortion issue. And I know in my soul that when the men are healed and whole and come off the sideline and can pick back up their mantle of leadership, that's when it's going to end. But like I said, we've spent 50 years telling you to sit down and shut up. And I do want any man that is listening to know that, if abortion is part of your story, there are resources for you. Mike's going to have our contact information. We can easily connect you with someone in your area or with ministries that do virtual men's abortion recovery. If this is part of your story, we want to get you healed and whole, and just reach out and we can make that connection for you.
That's awesome. If you guys could provide some of those links, we'll add them to our show notes. That would be fantastic. Jarid, any final comments or thoughts here?
Yeah, I would just say we did a survey of 1,000 abortion-minded women, and we asked them, what is the biggest influence on whether you choose life or not? And it was the man. Whether he was involved or not, whether he was abortion-minded or not, he was the number one influence. So if he's the number one influence, we can't just discard him. He needs to be who we're going after. We need to be going after him, getting him into our center, getting folks from the church to come in and volunteer. I'll cover the 2 to 4 shift. I'll cover the 10 to 12 shift, teaching them what abortion options are so that they know what they're doing. They're not just thrown in a room and I don't know what to say to this guy. Training him up, because the centers that we see that offer fatherhood programming have a lower rate of abortion than our centers that don't offer fatherhood programming. And so I'm 100% on board with Jill in that I do believe it is turning. And it's turning because we've started to include the whole family instead of just her.
Yes.
And
I love
so
it.
Tell your guys, call your local pregnancy center, say, I am interested, what can I do? And if they don't know what to do, say, well, then let me figure it out, and I'll call Jarid and Jill, and we'll do a 3-way call, and we'll figure this out.
Absolutely.
I love it. Hey, listen, thank you so much. We're longer than I normally go on these podcasts, but this has been rich. And I don't, like Jarid said, I don't think this will be the last time we do this, because there's much more to unpack. And I really do want this to be something that we focus on, because and I'll just say this often becomes a political issue, but for me, this is a biblical issue. It is manhood, biblical manhood, discipling men. This is a manhood issue. And man, I think that spans all kinds of spectrums. And so that's where I want to live with this whole thing. So Jill, Jarid, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. You've been a blessing today, and I pray that God will continue to give you favor in your work there through CareNet. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Good to have you. Well, folks, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Noble Man Podcast with Jill Marquis and Jarid Mayo from CareNet. And man, I don't think this will be the last time we'll hear from them. Be on the lookout for show notes and other information about how you and the men from your church could get involved with supporting a local pregnancy center and making a difference in someone with a crisis pregnancy, a couple with a crisis pregnancy saying yes to parenting or to adoption. So God bless you, folks. We'll be back next week for another episode of the Noble Man Podcast.